So first of all, let me welcome you to this third out of 5 community events leading up to the Digital Education Hackathon that will be running in November, on November 12th and 13th. The aim of the Digital Education Hackathons is to co-create the future of digital education, and we are welcoming a number of different participants to join us, either as hosts or participants or experts or whatever, during the events in November, on November 12th and 13th. If you are not yet familiar with the Digital Education Hackathon concept, I would advise you to go and visit the website because we're not going to dive much more into the event as such today. What we are going to do, however, is to focus in on one of the core thematic areas that we hope will be addressed or hacked during the event in November. And that is the role of non-formal education providers and how they can be a part in growing digital skills across Europe. I still see quite a few people joining. That's wonderful. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm just about to do the introduction for today, and there will be a few minutes to settle in and find your seat, so to say. So welcome to the last people joining the call just now. My name is Line. I will be the host of this event this afternoon. I am a member of the steering group behind the Digital Education Hackathon. I also participated in the event last year, and I'm pleased to see many new faces, but also a few people that we have met before in these webinars here. So about today, as I said, we have 45 minutes together. We've invited 2 distinguished speakers or guests today. They're actually also my colleagues from the steering group. They have a deep and a broad insight in today's topic, so I'm looking very much forward to present them and welcome them in a second. We have planned for 45 minutes, but the last few events we've done have actually, we actually felt a need to stay on a little longer and answer questions from you, from the audience. So what I have agreed with Ilona and Altheo is that we will, if needed, stay for half an hour extra today and take questions from you, from the audience, if you feel there is something you want them to elaborate or dive into. So that's an extra service for you as potential hosts or participants of the DigiEduHack, that you can actually raise a few extra questions if you want. So before we dive into the agenda of today, I just wanted to give you a very brief background as to why we're here. We still have a few people connecting, so warm welcome to you as well. The Digital Education Hackathon is designed as one of many tools to back up the EU Commission's Digital Education Action Plan. That is, by the way, just about to be reiterated this year, or as we speak. The Digital Education Action Plan by the Commission seeks to support let's say, the use of technology in education and training and learning across Europe. But it also seeks to support the development of digital competencies across Europe. So we are, let's say, one tool to actually try to make this happen by activating citizens and experts and people working in the digital sphere to co-create the future of digital education together. Before I say more about the topic of today, let me present our speakers. First, I wanted to welcome you, Ilona Kish. You're sitting somewhere in Europe, a very nice, beautiful place we can all see. But I'm so pleased to have you here still, even though it seems like you are hiking. You refer to yourself as a library avenger, and I'm curious maybe to hear, let's say, elaborate a little bit on that a little later. But you're also the director of the organization called Public Libraries 2030, which is an organization that believes public libraries to be the key to a democratic, socially engaged and digital inclusive Europe. So that's a broad and relevant agenda. The Public Libraries 2030 program gathers 65,000 libraries, I think I read. That's pretty impressive. So there are a lot of organizations behind your voice. Through various activities, you support leading European libraries to become powerful change agents. And you create and share knowledge on innovative projects happening across Europe, all with the aim of empowering and engaging citizens. You previously served as the Secretary General of Culture Action Europe, which is an umbrella organization or association promoting arts and cultural associations across Europe. So I know that you work with all these different elements. You work dedicated to create a stronger European library sector through EU advocacy and network building. So we are so pleased to have you here today because it's clear from this presentation that you have a lot of insight and a huge network in this area.
Thank you.
And next to you we have Altheo Valenti. Welcome to you as well, Altheo.
Hi.
You also seem to be in a very cozy place, not maybe that dramatic as Ilona, but still. You are a sociologist and a communicator, and I know that you have a lot of experience in running hackathons, actually, which is the tool that we're all going to use on November 12th and 13th to hack the future of digital education. 4 years ago, you launched the first social hackathon in Umbria, focusing on the creation of innovative solutions aimed at solving a variation of digital challenges. And that's going to be interesting to hear your experience with that. You're a member of national associations and networks in the field both of innovation and digital cultural heritage. And I know that you, among other roles, serve as a board member in the organization All Digital. All Digital promote digital skills by empowering member organizations that are mostly non-governmental education providers to support millions of Europeans to succeed in digital transformation. What you do is that you provide them with training and advice to do so. So the work you focuses on and support, which I find really interesting, is focusing in on Europeans that have an insufficient level of digital skills and, of course, try to help them. These people have less chances to find work, they have less chances to use online services, to have a better quality of life, and to be included in today's society due to their lack of digital skills or literacy. So a lot of knowledge and insights on your table as well. I'm super, super pleased to have you with us today. Now that I think we have a good group of people with us, the last few ones just joining now, welcome to all of you. I think it's time to dive into the topic of today. So let me inspire the presentation and the discussion with a few numbers for all of you. So we know that 169 million European citizens lack basic digital skills. That's 169 million EU citizens. That's quite a lot. That accounts for 44% of the grown-up population, or people above the age or between the age of 16 and 74. 44%. That's quite a lot. Lack of access to digital services, as well as lack of awareness of these digital possibilities, of course, could have a major impact on citizens' lives and may even result in social exclusion. So it is quite a huge issue we're looking at here. When we then start talking about how we can enhance the digital skills, it's not only in the hands of the formal education system. Altheo, I know that you're working with quite many different NGOs and non-public organizations. What is it in your mind that these organizations can do to elevate the digital skills of European citizens?
Well, first of all, let me underline that with more than 40% of European citizens not achieving the minimum level of basic digital skills, nowadays, the digital gap in Europe is a reality. And it interests both the public and the private sector. From our point of view, in order to support the bridging between this digital gap and the enhancement of the digital competencies for all citizens, from kids to elderly, both public and private stakeholders can really rely on the expertise and the experience of NGOs, such as those who we called digital competence centers, used to be called in the previous programming period, telecenters. Maybe you know this type of centers, but now we wanted to expand the terminology to digital competence centers, because these type of services actually implemented through different type of NGOs. It's where you go to be supported or to learn something about digital competence. Can be a library, can be a public space, whatever. What can we do actually? We can definitely work side by side with education system in training of students and adult learners. We can continue to train marginalized citizens and communities, especially focusing on those who are outside the formal education system. And we definitely can support public authorities and or private companies in reskilling and upskilling workers and people in search of employment. So we can definitely work on these aspects. Let's say that during the last 10 years, the role of these digital competence centers has also evolved from being simply physical spaces where people used to go to connect to the internet, to something more interactive. Nowadays, we actually are promoting dynamic and cooperative environments with the aim to equip all citizens with those skills and competencies that allow them to be real, let's say, prosumers of the digital world. One example, just to give you a concrete idea, is this network of social academy labs that with All Digital, the international NGO that I represent, we are promoting with a European project called Hack AD. These labs are blended digital co-creation units. So there is definitely one physical space where people can go and meet, but supported by interactive online platforms, also to cope with all the challenges we all faced during the last year. Here, these type of spaces can be easily set up in any public or private, of course, socially oriented organization. And the main goal is to exploit the results of digital learning programs and initiatives in favor of the local communities. I organize a course, I produce a digital output, but these should have an impact on the community.
Perfect, wonderful. That sounds really interesting. Thanks a lot for opening up that box for us. I'm sure there will be a few questions for you a little later as we return to the question and answer session. But I would like to maybe just ask you a question first, Ilona, before we open up to the interactive session. Because as I said before, you represent the Public Library 2030 program, and I know that there are I've read 65,000 public libraries across Europe that you are kind of uniting. 100 million people in EU visit one of these libraries. And what do you think that the public libraries can do to support this agenda?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much. And obviously we're not representing all 65,000 public libraries. That would be quite an achievement. There are about 65,000 public library spaces. Yeah, so I mean, public libraries have really evolved a lot over the last 20, 25 years, and changing all the time, as they take on the digital and the knowledge agenda. So, I think you can expect to see in every public library now some sort of public access computer terminal, and let's say that's an absolute minimum. What has happened is that it's become often the only place in a city where you can get online, for example, sometimes. We've seen some quite interesting cases during the pandemic when, for a time, the libraries were closed down, is that people would come and stand outside the library to use the public Wi-Fi, which the librarians kept on. As almost becoming a kind of essential service. Some of the bigger, tending to be perhaps more urban libraries, have a space that looks something like what Altea was referring to as telecenters, teaching rooms, or, rooms with banks of computer terminals that can be determined, that can be used for education. So then the real question is, what kind of people are coming into the library, and what kind of skills can be brought to those people? And that's where there's a real growth potential now, because what we know is that a lot of the people that use the public library may find accessing other types of education very challenging. They may be newly arrived immigrants who don't speak the local language. They may be homeless people. They may be people who are out of work, or people with young children. And there are many groups in society who make use of the public library who may not be able to get into some sort of more formal educational environment. So the libraries are really evolving now to offer, as far as possible, a range of programs and offers. And sometimes that really needs to be in partnership with third parties. If you're a smaller library, you can't expect the librarian to know everything. And often they might have their own challenges of learning sometimes as well, so increasingly we'll have digital departments. There's a library in Ghent here, big new library, that has a dedicated digital help desk, where people can come in and ask for some help with their smartphone, for example, or if they need to get online or they need to use an app or a system. And increasingly it's around people bringing in their own devices, but needing help with those. The libraries will have some sort of infrastructure always. And so, we're really positioning the libraries at the basic skills and non-formal, informal educational area, which is the broadest, the hardest to legislate for, and the one where there's perhaps the most need in some ways. If you've left school and you don't have basic skills, then it's very hard to get onto a digital competence. If you can't read, the organisation that used to host our organisation was a literacy foundation in the Netherlands, and participated in a survey from 5 or 6 years ago, which shows that 1 in 5 Europeans have low or no literacy, reading and writing skills. So when you overlay that with the digital gaps, it's a significant barrier. And obviously libraries are doing a lot of core work around basic literacy as well. So that's the role that we're increasingly playing, and looking at ways that we can resource that from a teaching and education point of view, and from a equipment and services in the library point of view.
Perfect. That sounds really cool and interesting. There's obviously a lot to do, and also a lot of good actors out there working on this agenda, so that's wonderful. We're going to dive much more into both what you've told now and this topic in general in a second, but I was actually a little curious to hear the voice of our participants as well, or at least get a little bit insight into who you are. This is a community event. It's an inspirational session leading up to our joint hackathons, hopefully running with all of you as hosts or participants in November. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask you, the participants, a question with activating a poll in a second, just for us to get a little bit of insight into who you are and what knowledge you are sitting with and bringing. So I'm now going to launch the first polling question, which you should be able to see on your screen now. So the question starts with: which specific target groups do you usually work in the field of adult education for digital skills? Either digital savvy adults, literate learners, or unfortunately you're not working in this area yet. That's kind of the 3 categories that we want you to answer to. And I will give you a few more seconds to chip in. I can see that we still miss a few votes here. And this is, of course, just to get an understanding of who are you, who's the audience, and that's with us today. So I'm wondering if we'll have a few more answers coming in. Seems so, they're still coming in. And halfway through, 10, 11. So I will give you 10 more seconds to cast your votes, and then I will show the results of the first poll here. So that's going to happen now. You should be able to see it on your screen. So the target groups that our audience here is working with, in case they are working in this area, they are primarily working with people that are actually digitally savvy. And of course, then need help maybe to start working with these competencies or whatever, and still also 9% work with some of the learners that we have just touched upon here in a second ago. And then we have a little more than half of you that are not yet working in this area, but might either be interested or at least have an interest in the area. So Ilona and Altheo, any reflections from your side on these numbers?
So not many people working with illiterates.
Mm.
Was that what I understood?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought I had shared it.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, I had to look at you.
My God.
I had to look at that. Yeah, sorry.
I am actually very digitally savvy, but maybe that that button just I missed that. There you are. Sorry. I hope you can see it now, all of you. So that's a picture of our audience today.
Let's say that also it's interesting to see that some of our guests, I mean, the majority of them, they're not working with adult education, which doesn't mean that actually they cannot contribute to the development of digital skills of other people. Because, like, just to introduce the topic of EPAL platform for the next 3 months will be how to contribute to adult learners' literacy, also in the digital field, thanks to intergenerational learning. And this could be a great idea for an hackathon, an intergenerational hackathon, bringing together young generation with illiterate adults.
For sure. Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Does that mean people are working with children or in a different field, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. We wouldn't know. This was just the first, first question. What we can ask, though, and what we can do is to ask a second question that I have prepared. So I'll do that now and launch the second poll that we have planned for today. Just a second, and it will be with you. Here you are. So the second question, that's the last question to you, dear audience, is what type of adult education center do you represent? So is it a private, is it a public, or an NGO, or none of the above? So that's just to get a little bit of insight into where you're coming from and what perspectives you're bringing. And I wait for a few more answers, and then I will close the poll and also this time show the results. See, I just see a few more still typing. So now is the last chance to cast your vote. And I will end the polling, and I will also share the results. So I hope you see them now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the majority of our community here with us today are representing or working with NGOs in this area, and then the public and the private sector is equally represented by almost 18% each, and then we have 27% not working with any of the above, but still the majority are representing NGOs. Any reflections from your side on this result before we move on?
That's nice to see the heterogeneity actually of the group. I would really curious to know about the 3 who are not working in any of the other 3 sectors, just for curiosity. But yeah, I mean, definitely my experience, from any type of field you're working, you can actually do activities in the field of digital skills in an appropriate way. So, yeah.
Yeah, but that's true. It's interesting that we have an almost equal share among the different groups here. So I'm going to end the polls here and just ask you, the audience, to, if you have any questions that are either inspired by where you're coming from and what you're bringing to the table, or any of the good topics that Altheo and Ilona has already kind of touched upon, then please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. We have a team sitting and waiting for the questions, and they will of course collect the ones, and then we will put them forward to the speakers by the end. While we hopefully wait for a few more questions to come in, I would like maybe, Ilona, you to just elaborate a little bit on what you said before, and then about the libraries being that kind of vehicle in society that could maybe even unite different actors. You talked about partnerships that could unite different organizations to work in this area. I'm also curious maybe to hear how libraries could work as a supporter of the, let's say, the co-creation of knowledge that people are so keen to do now, not maybe just coming passively and reading books and getting knowledge, but also creating stuff together and creating knowledge together and utilizing the huge knowledge pool that is at the libraries. How do you see that kind of active role or supporting that active creation? Is that something that libraries are diving into already?
Yeah. No, that's fundamental for the vision that we have of libraries going forward. So I'm not sure if the library's ever actually been passive, but it's more in terms of broadening and feeling validated in taking on different roles. So, you know, librarians always had a kind of community relation role. And the thing about librarians is they know the people that come through the door. You know, they see them every day, they see them every week, they know what they read, they know what they're interested in. So, but what we're talking about now, you know, libraries are often really seen as this trusted third space. And so what we've been thinking about is how, you know, many libraries have big spaces now. They maybe have much more space, private meeting rooms, various different rooms. So one thing is, it's not just a space to rent, but it's a space to work with that knowledge that's in the library staff in partnership. You know, so obviously as an external partner, you can come in and say, can I use the library for A, for B, for C? And that's totally possible. But really what's interesting is working with the programming team of the library, which works in some ways like a cultural organization now, and says, well, you know, what are our thematic interests for the year? How are we thinking about what we know about the community that we're serving, and thinking about the programs that we're designing that can invite those people in, perhaps invite people in who don't want to borrow books but want to participate in something different. When it comes to digital stuff, there's been a real movement in the last few years of something called maker spaces or fab labs, and they kind of cross over to some extent where fab labs are really entrepreneurial hubs for people to prototype and to test out ideas and projects with sometimes very expensive equipment. So the library can make available not only the equipment, but the support and the infrastructure for people to, you know, you'd see things like 3D printers or laser cutting items, I mean, you know, way beyond my knowledge, big rollers that push out bits of perspex that you can slice, you know, so a whole range of stuff, you know, that works with that. And maker spaces, again, which really encourage users of the library, often basic electronics, learning how to do stuff with music. That's often very interesting for younger players as well. In the library where I have my office, we have a gaming room, but we also have a media lab, which the teenagers can create their own games in, for example. You know, it's a big library in downtown Brussels. It serves a particular population. So for a big city library, you'll have hundreds of programmed events a year, the majority of which will be coming from the library in response to what they see the community is asking for. So it's really about using the space differently. And as I say, perhaps somebody who comes in to borrow a book might be excited to join something else. Somebody who just comes in for an event may suddenly think, oh, I'll pick up a book. You know, so there's a rotational feeling there, but it has to be community specific. You know, it has to be driven to what the local community needs. So, you know, obviously you need some space to do that, but I always laugh and say you can always tell what a library is thinking if the bookshelves are on wheels. Because if it's a small library, what they do is they put the bookcases to the side in the evenings for their film club or for whatever else participatory event might be going on. And even the library can offer a space for collective creation of any kind. And I think that's really exciting.
There's a question in the chat from Rolf, who's asking about the role of libraries. And he's saying, what is the role of libraries in verifying digital skills of individuals, for example, marginalized groups such as refugees or the like? Yeah, could you reflect a little bit on that?
Sorry, so the questions...
So he's asking, verifying...
Maybe, hello.
Yeah, there you are. Maybe you want to repeat it yourself.
I quite understand the question, I'm sorry.
Directly. So obviously, so what I have understood is that the libraries, they are kind of consulting centers to some extent. So they open a space, but then also they help with like technical difficulties that people have. We named that help desk in Ghent, you know, that as an example. So I think what is pretty interesting is if that could continue as a kind of a counseling towards like, you know, what skills do you have?
Yeah.
Where could you obtain skills, like directing them to certain resources that could be books or increasingly also e-media or e-learning resources that the library provides, and then helping them to have these skills verified or, you know, maybe even before being verified, just have an awareness of these skills so that they could make use of them.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And you know, obviously that's quite resource intensive. I certainly know some libraries that have very strong partnerships, say, with the local job centres. And that's also quite interesting in terms of what the tools for self-assessment are that are available. You know, and I think it's important that the library doesn't replace the job, you know, works in partnership with the real experts in those fields. I think the interesting thing for the libraries is that they need to know where to point people to. And sometimes the first or the second step can be taken in the library. You know, there's job clubs in libraries helping write your CVs, doing test interviews and, you know, all of that stuff. But also for the libraries to know, well, you know, we've done what we can here, but there's a really specialized place. Perhaps what we've done is given the patron the confidence to go into a more formal institution, to take a different kind of training course or, you know, I was also going to say, I don't know if this is going to come up, but obviously with the growth of online training, that's something that's happening a bit more in libraries as well. You know, so if you don't have access to the internet, you don't have a device, but you've learned that there's an online course that you can do, that's something that might take place in a library as well. And maybe there's a support group that can come together around that. So, but I think it's a really great idea.
If I may build on this, actually, a project that we are carrying out together with Ilona, which is called Biblio, where we are investigating on the most needed skills to, you know, support libraries in this process of digital transformation. Well, one of the two profiles that came out from the research is called community engagement and communication officer, and his or her main role is actually what Ilona was saying, to identify the needs of the audiences and of the users, and also to support this process of, you know, as Rolf was saying, verifying, but also suggesting possible training path and maybe better organize the digital activities within the library to meet the needs of the local communities. So it's a new job that can come out definitely in the future. Yeah.
So now that you're saying, you know, new jobs and profiles, if we talk about the learners, like what are the skills that are, I mean, we say digital skills as if we know what it is. What do you know of you from your research and your work on what kind of let's say core skills that are represented in these new job profiles that we see kind of emerging?
It's a very unexplored area because we, at the moment, we are at the beginning of the digital transformation of our society. So, which is the good and you know, and the bad side of it, because we can definitely guide it through the best possible ending. But also there's a lot that we still don't know. In 10 years time, there will be jobs that today we cannot even imagine. But we are trying to, let's say, explore exactly to navigate this topic through two different strategies. The first one is what I just said, thanks to maybe European projects or research in the field, talking with the actual practitioners, trying to understand what is needed. So to trying to anticipate the future needs based on the actual needs. And I have some examples. One I've just said in the library sector. The other, together with the community engagement and communication officer, there is another profile which is really needed that we called digital transformation facilitator. So someone who is capable to guide hand by hand the librarians into next stage of digital innovation, which is not really the expert on digitizing library goods, but it's something more in a wider scope, so that involves the whole working environment. Similar in another sector, which is agriculture, with the seed project, where our main goal was to to see how digital transformation is impacting on agriculture and what skills were needed. Well, at the beginning, where we were thinking and really high-tech skills, and then talking to the people, we realized that actually the social dimension is fundamental, because if you implement dramatic changes in a sector like agriculture, where culture and social aspects are crucial, and you don't take care of them, then it's useless. So we came out with this social digital facilitator in agriculture that is not existing right now. And then on a completely different page, a very good exercise that we are carrying out with our local NGO, which is called Crack Lab, is to engage students, young people, especially young people, in what we call the non-existing jobs of the invisible city. So you let them go into a real fantastic world where I just give you some example of possible jobs that they proposed. We have the Museator Guide, so a guide that puts together theater and museums. We have the VR fiction director, so someone who is able to really work with puppets actors that are not existing, but they are existing just in a virtual environment. Or the AR tailor, someone who is reproducing costumes for that you can fit in augmented reality. So it's really huge. It's really huge and fun sometimes. Yeah.
Wonderful. We have quite a few reflections and comments in the chat right now. One from Binta, one of our known hosts. That ask again a little bit back to the libraries and what's the role of the libraries in acting as a co-working space or an accelerator lab for digital education activities? And I think you did touch a little bit on it, Ilona, saying that even digital learning could now happen with the support of librarians who are at the library. Is there anything you would like to add to that, or or is there maybe a limit to, let's say, what the librarians can be used for in this, let's say, area?
Personally, I don't think there's any absolute limit anywhere. I think it has to be right for the space. You know, I think big co-working spaces and accelerator labs require different kinds of spaces maybe sometimes, and, you know, different kinds of cultures. So I know libraries where they have kind of small versions of that, you know, yeah, why not? Why not? You know, it doesn't have to be, but if there's a real demand and there's not a kind of offer, and then the library space can lend itself to that, and there's, you know, knowledge and expertise there, yeah, it's a good idea.
So the sky is the limit. That's wonderful. Good to know. I think we are, I mean, as I said in the beginning, we plan this to be approximately 45 minutes. We may have a few participants that will need to leave soon. But for the ones of you that are interested, we will extend with half an hour of more questions coming in and answers from Ilona and Alteo as well. But I just wanted as a, let's say, a break right now to ask you two very quick questions, Ilona and Alteo, because we are all here today because we are either interested in or planning to host or participate in a digital DigiEduHack in November. So I wanted to ask you, like, do you see any specific, let's say, challenge in your area that you would love somebody to address or to hack when November comes? I mean, we do have a few hosts with us today, so maybe you could give them some inspiration to what are the core challenges that you see in your areas. Just let's say quick and dirty, a few keywords for them to work on going forward. Ilona, do you want to start, or are you contemplating?
I mean, you know, it's interesting because I'll tell you have more experience than me in hackathons, you know. I
but
find
it could be anything, you know.
We looked at this, you know, for the libraries, and it's just, I don't even know where to start. You know, there just seems to be so many challenges, and I think certainly from our sector we need some help in understanding. You know, we work a lot with design thinking in libraries, so there's a real kind of iterative process, and it seems to me that you can't have a group of professionals deciding on something. You need to find out what people need, you know, that there needs to be a kind of exchange in order to pick some topics that would really be worth spending time on. You know, and I know we're talking about social hackathons versus, you know, kind of digital ones, you know, like there'd be definitely sort of interesting things around, you know, how can you know what's going on in the library better? How can you participate differently? You know, what stops somebody walking through the door in a library? You know, if the front desk librarian's in a bad mood that day, I don't know. You know, it's like understanding what the barriers to learning are, or is there a way that you can make that more, you know, I find it overwhelming as a
It is, and I mean, the fact is also with our DigiEduHacks that they are, I mean, again, here the sky's the limit. You could hack technical issues, challenges, but you could definitely also hack social challenges. So how do we actually make people kind of use the libraries or use other organizations or NGOs better for this purpose? So yeah, again, we've seen a variation of challenges coming to the table with during these hacks. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Althea, I'm gonna ask you the same questions. Do you do the same question? Do you have a few keywords or topics that you would love to see somebody addressing during the November event?
Yeah, definitely. Not being scared of the digital, you know, dimension of the event, because as you said, Line, challenges can really be of many different angles. And if I have to think about my field of work, which is adult education, I always hear these problems. Okay, but there should be a standard for validation or a law for this or a regulation for that. I would just use the opportunity of DigiEduHack to completely change the approach to engage your learners or users, whatever, in a social innovation experience that has also relation to digital innovation. But first of all, social innovation cannot exist without social, maybe we can call it subjectivity, well, a grassroots approach. This is what I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, and DigiEduHack is what I would use as an opportunity to come out with nice ideas and break the rules sometimes. Also to answer Claudia comment on the chat that she's saying no, that they can use it to start up a new network. That is fantastic.
Mm. Yeah, so it is basically a 24 hours or how long you decide to design it, where you can bring together all the bright minds of your community and hack any given challenge here. So that's true. It's good to see, Claudia, that you can actually use this as a kickoff for something else for sure.
And I see that.
So is there
this thing around you know, the library sometimes not so open. You know, it's true. This is a new field for libraries, and I think they're a bit overwhelmed sometimes, you know, how to have the confidence to go to that. You know, some libraries do hackathons all the time, you know, and that's part of the work we're doing, is to try and put in place the conditions for libraries to feel more confident, or to see that their role goes beyond lending books.
Yeah.
Comment.
Perfect. So my final question to the two of you, and that's again just to give some inspiration to our audience here or to our community, is there any specific place where you would advise them to look for inspiration, either an organization that's working in this area of digital skills in the non-formal education sector, or a researcher or a practitioner that you think is super inspiring, that people could look to for inspiration before they start organizing their hack in your area, or something you've touched upon?
Here it's easy for me to just promote the summit that All Digital is organizing in a couple of weeks. I will share the link here in the chat. There should be, there will be also a session on DigiEduHack again, and to see, you know, how we can propose ideas coming from our members. So definitely, it's 2 days online summit taking place in Berlin, but definitely it's going online. And yeah, maybe another, if you do not have the chance to attend the summit or some of the sessions, a nice place to look for partnerships and ideas, it's the Unite IT platform, which is a e-inclusion network that we promoted as All Digital some years ago. And now it really encompasses a lot of good practices and examples on how to use digital innovation with social impact at educational level, but also, you know, in other sectors.
I think they're excellent suggestions. I was going to say, All Digital is a really great place to start. And there's a lot of really good links there. Certainly, if you're looking for stuff at European level, excellent.
That's good. Perfect. And just want to make sure that you all then check the chat, because that's where Theo has now posted the few links that he's referring to, where you can go and look for inspiration in case you are planning to host a hackathon in November and want some inspiration for the challenges. There is a comment in the chat as well about the importance of, let's say, bring the right challenge to the table when you set up a hack, from Alexandra, who's been participating in a hackathon recently. And I just wanted also to point to our core team here at the DigiEduHack, who can also help all of you to kind of work with your challenge. There's a lot of good inspiration material on the website for, let's say, making a workable hackathon challenge, because of course you need to get off right to actually inspire people to open their heads and their minds and use their hands together for 24 hours to work on these challenges. So there should be a lot of inspiration there for you as well, if you are in need of some more help to design your event properly. So we have now passed the 45 minutes. We still have quite a lot of participants with us. That's wonderful. So I just wanted to ask if there are any more questions. If people want to speak out loud, it's also, of course, an opportunity. Since we are not that many people, you can definitely ask your question to Altheo and Ilona if you want. That could be something that somebody would like to do. So I don't know if I have a question from one or two of you that you would like to pose to our experts today. Otherwise, I will, of course, just proceed with my long list here. So it doesn't seem like people are jumping up right now. So maybe just a question from my side then. I mean, we've touched a little bit on the fact that there are a number of Europeans where we just simply want to get them up to a level where they can participate in society and learning in life and work in general. And then there are, of course, a few where they just need to get inspired to start using all those crazy, wonderful new tools that digitalization has given us, such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence and all that. If we are talking a little bit more about, let's say, the more let's say hairy or advanced digital tools, is there any place where you would think that people could go to look for inspiration for, again, how to use it could be virtual reality or artificial intelligence to build education activities or to help learners to learn? Are there any areas or tools that you would that you've come across that are of inspiration here?
Yeah. I mean, I have two things. One is that, you know, a lot of libraries are many of the big libraries will have virtual reality headsets, you know, of one kind or another, and programs that are associated with that. They've been doing that for years now. Yeah. It's a slightly cautious response for me because, of course, the big player in this field is Google. And, you know, I don't know how it is in smaller towns, but certainly the Google spaces in the bigger towns offer a lot of opportunities. And there's some library networks that have been partnering with Google. Google has a program that's like what's it called? It's kind of like I can't remember the technical term. It's where you have a kind of headset, Google Cardboard. Put the phone in, so it's not a real VR, but it's a kind of simulated, you know, multi-dimensional. And they have a whole teaching program with that, for example. So, you know, you have the teacher that has the iPad, and then the kids, you know, and there's kits, you know, some libraries, you know, you get 30 phones plus the Google headsets, and the kids come in and they do a space exploration lesson or an underwater, you know. So I'm quite aware of what's Google's doing in that area. Oculus is the biggest player in virtual reality, and they're owned by Facebook, of course. So, you know, I think there's a question about knowledge and education in terms of data collection, how those tools are being, you know, they're both in experimental phase. I mean, VR's in experimental phase, so mostly people want to learn how people are using them, you know, and that's something to. We might not have said that 3 years ago, but I think we're slightly more aware of the role that big tech plays in our privacy lives. So, and they're the ones that are developing and owning the technology in terms of a lot of the hardware, you know. So, you know, one has to be quite creative to look for other solutions. Is that a place to start?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking that maybe that is something to start working on. Like, how can we actually be operating in this area without, let's say, being in or getting into trouble here with the bigger tech players, with other open platforms or other things that we can start playing with. So that might actually also be a question. Luckily, this session today is not about answers. It's more about inspiring for good questions that can be hacked. So there's definitely something here. We also talked about in one of the previous events, like the the ownership of the data that actually is produced when you do digital learning or education in general. It's like, who's actually owning that data and how do we work with that? Not to see it necessarily as a problem, but just to be aware that there are huge data sources that needs to be handled, and who are actually in charge of that.
Exactly.
So that's definitely another topic as well. Yeah. I don't see much more questions coming into the chat, so I don't know if there are any last issues or let's say topics that you, Theo and Ilona, would like to point towards. Otherwise, I think we should start, let's say, tying this up for today. But if you do have a few last comments or topics that you would like to mention as inspiration to our audience, I would say that now is the time. Theo, would you go first? Do you have any last reflections or?
Yeah, I take the chance actually just to explain the two, the last two links I've shared on the chat that I refer to your previous question. If we knew any good channel for looking for resources or ideas, these are actually what I would suggest. Sticking to a European level, as Ilona said, there are a lot of big players that could be even more advanced. But here, at least, both the EPALE network and the Europeana education community, they are very, very active. I'm working in both networks, and I can really say that at least it's a good place to start, to be inspired and to learn from other good experiences. So the two links that I've shared gives you really tons of nice ideas on how you can work in the digital education sector. Europeana, EPALE is more related to adult learners, while Europeana is related to art and culture education.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for that, Theo. Ilona, any last topics or?
No, I suppose I was just sort of thinking that it's been really interesting with COVID. I don't know if you agree with me, Alteo, but it seems that one of the conversations in education over the last years has been what place the digital has to take, you know, and I feel there's quite a strong consensus that you need a blended learning approach. You know, you can't do everything online, you know, and you really, now whether that means that, you know, when there's a time when you really physically can't meet is a challenge, of course, but, you know, you cannot just be an anonymous learner behind something that's delivered, you know, and that there has to be, you know, those two things come together, you know. So I think there's a sort of maturing now in the sector, you know. For a while, it's a bit of anxiety in the education sector that suddenly everything, it could be, you know, all these MOOCs that came out, and then suddenly, you know, just all the universities would close because it would all be delivered online, and that would be that. And we know that's not the case now. So, you know, that kind of human interaction, and also what we know is there's some real societal challenges in the humanizing of technology, you know, and understanding these as these tools is increasingly important. So that was just a slightly maybe off-piste reflection, but
I agree.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with you. Yeah. I start thinking that there is something to this kind of what is then the right blend of digital and non-digital, and how will that be decided by educators going forward? So that's super.
But let's hope it's not driven by resources or politics, but by context and need.
Yeah.
If only.
That was I think that was a perfect sentence to end our community event on today. So with that, I want to thank both you, Ilona, and you, Theo, for joining in today and inspiring and bringing all your knowledge and insights to the table here. And I hope that all the participants with us has been inspired and now want even more to go back and start designing their digital education hackathon for November 12th and 13th, and that we will all see each other out there, most likely digital or maybe even face-to-face if we are allowed to. But good luck to all of you, and reach out to us, to the central team, if there are any more questions or anything you would like us to answer to, or any reflections from even from the experts of today. Then we can definitely share that in our different channels.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks everybody.